Welcome back to AU Family Channel, and thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to have you as one of our loyal listeners. If our stories have ever touched your heart, we are so grateful that you keep coming back to spend this time with us. So find somewhere comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and let us begin today's story, together. The summer I turned 16, my parents put me on a bus with one duffel bag and sent me to live with a man I had never met, in a coastal town so small it did not show up on most maps. They called it a fresh start. I called it exile. I was angry at the whole world back then, and I was certain that summer would be the worst of my life. What I did not know, sitting on that bus with my arms crossed and my jaw clenched, was that a gruff old fisherman with salt in his beard was about to reach a part of me that no one else had been able to touch. I need you to understand who I was that year, because it matters. I was failing school on purpose. I was sneaking out at night. I had been caught twice with things I should not have had, and I had stopped speaking to my parents in anything but insults. I was so full of rage that I could not have told you where it came from. I only knew that everyone around me seemed to be the problem, and that the smallest kindness felt like an insult I had to punish. My mother cried a lot that year. My father stopped knowing what to say to me. And I told myself I did not care about either of them. The final straw was a night I do not like to remember. I took my father's car without a license, and I did not bring it back in one piece. No one was hurt, but it could have been so much worse, and even I knew it. My parents did not scream this time. That was the frightening part. They just sat me down, quiet and gray in the face, and told me they had made a decision. I was going to spend the whole summer with a man named Walter, an old family friend who lived up the coast and fished for a living. They said maybe hard work and quiet would do what they could not. I heard punishment. I heard that they were giving up on me. The bus ride north took the better part of a day. I watched the city fade into farmland, and the farmland fade into low hills, and the hills finally break open into the wide gray shine of the sea. The town at the end of the line was nothing. A single main street. A general store. A church with peeling paint. A harbor full of small weathered boats knocking against each other in the wind. It smelled of salt and diesel and fish, and I hated it instantly. I stepped off that bus with my duffel bag and my worst attitude, and I promised myself I would make this summer as miserable for everyone as it was going to be for me. Walter was waiting by an old truck at the edge of the lot. He was somewhere past 60, tall and weathered, with hands like knotted rope and eyes the same washed gray as the water behind him. He did not smile. He did not hug me. He looked me up and down once, the way you might size up a piece of second-hand gear, and then he said only that the truck was over there and that I should not slam the door. That was it. No welcome. No speech. I climbed in beside him, furious for reasons I could not name, and we drove to his house without exchanging more than 10 words the whole way. His house sat alone at the end of a gravel road, a small wooden place gone silver from decades of sea wind. Inside it was plain and clean and quiet, so quiet that the ticking of a single clock filled every room. There were no photographs on the walls. No television that I could see. Just books, and rope, and the tools of a fisherman, and a spare room with a narrow bed that would be mine. Walter told me we woke at 4 in the morning, that breakfast was at 4:15, and that the boat left the dock at 1/2 whether I was on it or not. Then he went to bed. It was barely past 8. I lay awake for hours, hating all of it. 4 in the morning came like a punishment. Walter did not wake me gently. He simply turned on the light, said the time, and walked away, and I understood that if I did not get up, he would leave without me and I would have nothing to do all day but sit in that silent house. So I got up. I was clumsy and slow and half asleep, and I resented every second of it. The world outside was black and cold, the stars still out, the sea a dark heaving thing I could hear but barely see. We ate in silence. And then we walked down to the harbor, and I stepped onto a fishing boat for the first time in my life, shivering and sullen and sure I would hate it. That first day on the water nearly broke me. I did not know a single thing, and Walter did not slow down to teach me kindly. He barked short instructions and expected them followed. Pull this. Coil that. Stand there. Do not stand there. My hands, soft from a life of doing nothing, were raw and blistered within hours. The boat pitched and rolled until I was sick over the side, and Walter did not even look up. He just kept working, steady and tireless, hauling nets that seemed to weigh more than I did. By the time we came back in, I was exhausted in a way I had never been, and I hated him, and I told him so under my breath. He heard me. Of course he heard me. But he did not rise to it. He just tied off the boat, looked at me with those flat gray eyes, and said that tomorrow I would do it again, and that I would keep doing it until I stopped being useless. Then he walked up the hill to the house and left me standing on the dock. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call my parents and beg them to let me come home. But some stubborn, wounded part of me refused to give any of them the satisfaction. So I stayed. And the next morning, at 4, I got up again, and I hated it again, and I did it again. The days blurred together, hard and gray and the same. We rose in the dark. We fished. We came home. We ate. We slept. Walter spoke to me only when there was work to explain, and I spoke to him only when I could not avoid it. I decided he was a cold, bitter old man who did not care about anything but his boat and his fish. I decided my parents had sent me to be forgotten. I nursed my anger like it was the only thing keeping me warm out there on that water. And yet, slowly, without my permission, my body was changing. The blisters became calluses. The nets came easier. I was learning, even as I refused to admit it. About 2 weeks in, something small happened that I have never forgotten. I made a mistake with a line, a stupid one, and it whipped loose and could have taken my hand off. Walter moved faster than I thought a man his age could move, and he grabbed me and pulled me back, and for 1 second his grip on my arm was not gruff at all. It was afraid. He held me a beat longer than he needed to, and then he let go and turned away and pretended it had not happened. But I had seen it. Under all that hardness, for just a moment, the old man had been terrified of losing me. And I did not understand why he would care. That night I could not sleep, so I got up for water, and I saw Walter sitting alone in the dark kitchen. He was not doing anything. He was just sitting, one rough hand wrapped around a cold cup of tea, staring at nothing. There was a loneliness on his face so heavy that it stopped me in the doorway. He did not know I was there. And for the first time since I had arrived, I did not see a cold old man punishing me. I saw a person carrying something. Something old and quiet and terribly sad. I went back to bed and lay in the dark, and for the first time all summer, I thought about someone other than myself. The next morning I did something I had not done once. I said good morning to him, and I meant it. Walter looked up, surprised, and gave a short nod. On the boat that day I worked without being told, anticipating what he needed, coiling the ropes before he asked. I do not know exactly why I did it. Maybe I was tired of the war. Maybe that glimpse of him in the kitchen had cracked something in me. Whatever it was, Walter noticed. And near the end of the day, as we motored home into a low gold sun, he said the first kind thing he had ever said to me. He said I was getting the hang of it. 4 small words, and they meant more than I could explain. After that, something between us began to thaw, so slowly I barely noticed it happening. He started teaching me instead of just ordering me. He showed me how to read the water, how to tell where the fish were by the color of the surface and the wheel of the birds overhead. He showed me knots that sailors had used for hundreds of years, guiding my clumsy fingers with his weathered ones. He told me the names of things, the parts of the boat, the moods of the sea. And I found, to my complete surprise, that I wanted to learn. That the anger I had carried for so long got a little quieter each time my hands got a little more sure. The work stopped feeling like a punishment and started feeling like something else. There is a kind of peace out on the water at dawn that I had never known existed. The sky going pink over a flat gray sea. The engine a low steady heartbeat under your feet. The gulls crying overhead. Walter and I would work for hours in a silence that no longer felt like a wall between us, but like something we shared. My body grew strong and brown from the sun. I slept deep and dreamless. And somewhere in all that salt and labor, the boy who had stepped off the bus so full of rage was quietly, without ceremony, beginning to disappear. We began to talk, a little, in the long hours between the nets. Walter asked me one day, plainly, why I was so angry all the time. And normally I would have snapped at anyone who asked me that. But out there, with no one else for miles, I found myself trying to answer honestly. I told him I did not know. I told him I felt like I did not fit anywhere, like something was wrong with me, like the anger was easier than whatever was underneath it. Walter listened without judgment, his eyes on the water. And when I was done, he did not lecture me. He just nodded slowly, as if he understood exactly, better than I could possibly have guessed. I started to grow curious about him, this quiet man who lived alone at the end of the world. I noticed things. A second coat hanging by the door, too small for him, gone stiff with age. A closed room down the hall that we never entered. The way he sometimes stood at the rail and looked out to sea for a long time with an expression I could not read. He never spoke about family. He never mentioned a wife, a child, a friend. It was as if his whole life were the boat and the water and this silent house. And I began to sense, without knowing anything, that Walter was a man who had lost something he had never gotten over. It was a storm that finally opened the door between us. A bad one came up faster than the forecast had promised, and we were caught out on the water when the sky turned black and the sea rose into gray mountains. I was terrified. Walter was calm, but I saw the tension in his jaw, the white of his knuckles on the wheel. He got us in, barely, through waves that crashed over the bow and soaked us to the bone. And when we finally reached the safety of the harbor, both of us shaking, drenched, alive, Walter did something I had never seen. He put his face in his hands, and this hard old man, this pillar of stone, began to weep. I did not know what to do. I sat there beside him in the rocking boat, the rain still coming down, and I put my hand on his shoulder, awkward and unsure. And through his tears, in a voice I had never heard him use, Walter began to talk. He said he was sorry. He said he had not meant to bring me out in weather like that. He said he could not have lived with it. He said he could not lose another one. Another one. The words hung in the wet air between us. And I understood, in that moment, that the storm had torn open a wound far older and deeper than anything the sea could do to us. Back at the house, dry and wrapped in blankets, Walter finally told me. He had a son once. His name was Daniel, and he had been a fisherman too, taught by Walter from the time he could walk, just as Walter was now teaching me. Daniel had been the whole of his heart. His wife had died young, and it had been just the two of them, father and son, on that boat, for years. And then, one gray morning when Daniel was 22 years old, they had gone out together, and a storm had come, and only one of them had come home. Walter had watched the sea take his boy, and he had not been able to save him. He told it in a flat, careful voice, but his hands would not stop shaking. That had been 11 years ago. His wife already gone, his only son taken by the same water that fed him, Walter had been utterly alone ever since. The closed room down the hall was Daniel's room, untouched since the day he died. The small coat by the door had been his. Walter had kept fishing, because it was all he knew, and because in some terrible way the sea was the last place he had been with his son. But he had stopped letting anyone close. He had stopped hoping. He had lived 11 years as a ghost in his own life, waiting for nothing, expecting nothing. And then he looked at me, and what he said next undid me completely. He said that when my parents had called, desperate about their angry, hurting boy, he had almost said no. He had not wanted a teenager in his house, stirring up a grief he had buried. But something had made him say yes. And from the day I stepped off that bus, sullen and furious and lost, he had seen his own son in me. Not because I was like Daniel, but because I was young and drowning, and he had failed to save one boy from the water, and he could not bear to fail another. He had been gruff with me, he said, because he had been so afraid to care again. I sat there and I cried too, the first time I had cried in years. All that summer I had believed I was being punished, sent away, forgotten. And the truth was the opposite. This broken old man had taken me in not to break me down but to keep me from breaking, had gotten me up at 4 every morning not to torment me but to give me the one thing that had ever saved him, the discipline and the peace of honest work on the water. Every hard word, every silence, every long day, it had all been him reaching for me the only way he knew how, with hands that had already lost too much. Something changed in both of us that night. The wall came down completely, and what was left was 2 wounded people who had somehow found each other at the end of a gravel road by the sea. I stopped seeing Walter as my jailer and started seeing him as something closer to family than I had felt in a very long time. And I think, for him, having me there began to fill a silence that had gone on for 11 unbearable years. We were an unlikely pair, the grieving old fisherman and the angry lost boy, but out there on that boat we had become exactly what the other one needed. We were healing each other, and neither of us had planned it at all. In the weeks that followed, Walter began to open the closed parts of his life. One evening he took me into Daniel's room, the first time he had let anyone in there in over a decade. He showed me photographs, and told me stories, and laughed, actually laughed, remembering his boy. I think it was the first time in 11 years he had been able to speak about Daniel without drowning in it. And I realized that I was giving him something too, that just by being there, by listening, by caring, I was helping him carry a weight he had carried alone for far too long. I had spent my whole life believing I had nothing to offer anyone. Walter proved me wrong. And Walter was giving me something I had never had. He believed in me. Not in some vague, hopeful way, but plainly, in the small daily proof of trusting me with the lines, the wheel, the work that had once been his son's. One morning he let me take the boat out of the harbor myself, standing behind me with his hand light on my shoulder, telling me I had it, that I was doing fine. And standing at that wheel with the sun coming up and the old man's quiet pride behind me, I felt something I had not felt in years. I felt worthy. I felt like maybe I was not broken beyond repair after all. I felt, for the first time, like I might be okay. The anger that had ruled me for so long did not vanish all at once, but it loosened its grip. I understood now that it had never really been about my parents, or school, or any of the things I had lashed out at. It had been about a boy who did not know his own worth, who was so afraid of not being enough that he had decided to be too much instead. Out there on the water, doing hard, real, necessary work beside a man who needed me, I had finally found something the anger had been hiding all along. I found that I mattered. That my hands could do good work. That I could be counted on. And a person who knows he matters does not need to burn the world down. I started calling my parents again. Real calls, not the sullen grunting I had given them for a year. I told my mother about the boat, about the birds, about learning to read the water. I heard her voice change on the phone, heard the careful hope in it, and for the first time I felt ashamed of how much I had hurt them, and I told them so. I apologized. My father went quiet on the line, and then he said, in a rough voice, that he was proud of me. I had spent so long being angry that I had forgotten they loved me the whole time, that sending me away had cost them more than it cost me. That summer gave me back my family too. Walter and I fell into a rhythm that felt, to both of us, like something we had been missing our whole lives. In the evenings after the day's work, we would sit on the porch and watch the sun sink into the water, and he would tell me about the sea, and about Daniel, and sometimes about his wife. I told him about my life, the real parts, the fears I had never said out loud to anyone. He gave me advice, plain and unhurried, the kind that comes from a man who has lost enough to know what actually matters. I had come to that town believing I was alone in the world. I was leaving it having found, of all people, an old fisherman who understood me better than anyone ever had. There was one evening near the end of the summer I will carry with me forever. We had brought in a good catch, and the light was golden on the water, and Walter turned to me on the deck and said that Daniel would have liked me. He said it simply, but I knew what it cost him to say it, and I knew it was the highest thing he could ever give me. I did not have words. I just nodded, and my eyes stung, and the two of us stood there in the gold light not needing to say anything more. In that moment I was not a troubled kid and he was not a broken old man. We were just two people who had found each other in time. The last week came far too quickly. I did not want to go home. That truth astonished me, given how desperately I had wanted to leave 3 months before. I had arrived hating this town, this house, this man, and now the thought of the bus taking me away from all of it filled me with a grief I had not expected. I asked Walter, half joking but not really, if I could just stay and be a fisherman. He smiled, one of the few real smiles I ever saw from him, and told me my family was waiting, and that I had work to do out there in the world. But he also told me that I would always have a place here. Always. On my last morning, we went out on the water one final time, just the two of us, the way we had 100 times that summer. We did not talk much. We did not need to. I worked the lines with hands that were strong and sure now, hands that knew what they were doing, and I looked out at the sea I had once hated and felt only love for it. When we came in, Walter handed me one of his knives, an old worn thing with a bone handle that I had seen him use all summer. He said a fisherman should have his own knife. It was the finest gift anyone has ever given me, and I have it to this day. Standing at the bus stop where it had all begun, I did not know how to say goodbye to him. So I did something neither of us was any good at. I hugged him. This gruff, weathered, closed-off old man, and he stood stiff for a second, and then his arms came around me and held on hard. When I pulled back, there were tears in those gray eyes, and there were tears in mine. He told me to work hard, and to be good to my parents, and to come back next summer. And then the bus came, and I climbed on, and I watched him grow smaller through the window until the road turned and the sea and the old man were gone. I have thought about that summer nearly every day of my life since. I went away a broken, angry boy who believed the whole world was against him, and I came home someone who knew his own worth, who understood his family loved him, who had finally found the peace that all that rage had been hiding. But here is the part that took me years to fully understand. The man who fixed me was not some wise, whole, untroubled teacher. Walter was as broken as I was, maybe more. He was a grieving father who had lost his only son to the sea and lived 11 years alone with it. And it was precisely his brokenness that let him reach mine. That is the lesson I want to leave you with, the thing I learned on that boat and have never let go of. Sometimes the person who saves you is not the strong one, not the one who has it all figured out. Sometimes it is the one who is quietly broken too, the one whose own wounds have taught them exactly how to sit with yours. Walter did not heal me from above. He healed me from beside, as one hurting soul reaching another. And in reaching for me, he healed a piece of himself. We do not have to be whole to help each other. Sometimes our cracks are precisely where our light gets through to someone else who is sitting in the dark. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end of this story. It truly means the world to me that you are here. If the summer I spent with the old fisherman moved your heart, please take a moment to give this video a like and to subscribe to AU Family Channel, where a brand new story is waiting for you every single week. And remember this, the one who fixes you may be the one who is quietly broken too, so be gentle with the wounded people around you, because they may be the ones who save you. Walter gave me my life back. I hope this story gives you something too. I will see you in the next one.